Okay, class, today we're going to be talking about variables and how you can use them. Basically, a variable is just a letter. It might be X, Y, Z. It is usually a letter. Sometimes it can be a symbol, but for algebra, we will be talking about letters. And those letters it can replace any number can be replaced by a variable. Okay, so we use variables to represent a number or a set of numbers. An algebraic expression is where we have a combination, a mathematical phrase that can include numbers, variables, and operation symbols. Okay, so an algebraic expression might be something like 2x plus 7x. Okay, you can see that this is an algebraic expression. It includes numbers and variables. Now, when we start to talk about equations, the only difference is this is where we bring in our equal signs. So an equation might be, we might use that mathematical phrase from above, that expression from above, 2x plus, hold on just a second. Okay, got rid of all that. Okay, I'm sorry. We bring in the equal sign. So let's say we had, I don't remember what we had, but 2x plus 7y, we might say that equals something, like 4, all right? That's an equation. So an equation is when we bring in a equal sign. All right, an open sentence is an equation that is equal to one or more variables. So we might have this one right up here had 2 variables, but we also might look like something like this, like y equals 7x minus 2 or something. It's got variables. These are equations with variables. All right, so let's just look at some examples on how we might use that. Our first examples are to write an algebraic expression for each phrase. So again, algebraic expressions, that's going to include our numbers and our variables. So we have letter A says 7 more than n. Okay, more than represents addition. Okay, so that's going to be 7 plus n. And that's our expression. For letter B, we talk about the difference, 7 and 7. Difference is going to represent subtraction. So that's going to be n minus 7. When we have something that says the product of 7 and n, that means it's multiplied. Now, when we're talking about algebraic expressions and multiplication, we don't usually use any type of sign that represents multiply. We put it together. So we might put just 7n. Okay, this represents multiplication. There's an invisible little multiplication sign. So if you put a number and a letter, it's when we do numbers and letters. When we're multiplying those together, we can just put those right next to one another, and that does signify multiplication. The word quotient, this is going to bring in division. So the quotient of n and 7 would be something like n divided by 7, and that would bring in a quotient. Okay, let's divide. The important part is to know which words mean which operations. Once you can figure out what operation the words are meaning, then the expressions are fairly easy to write. Okay, let's look at some that have a couple. Well, these have words. It says to define a variable and write an algebraic expression for each phrase. On example 1, they went ahead and gave us variables to use. Okay. This one, they tell us to define a variable. This is something you are going to have to know how to do. Be sure that you are writing this down. This is very important. Anytime that you're writing any kind of phrase or equation, you're always going to have to define those variables. So we're talking 2 times a number plus 5. We need a variable for this number because we don't know what we're going to do with that number. We're going to just make a symbol for that. So a number, we could use x, y, n. I'm going to use n. We'll say n equals a number. Okay, so then we're going to use n anywhere we see that number. So if we're doing 2 times a number plus 5, it means we're going to take n. We want to multiply that. 2 times means multiply that by 2 and then plus 5. Okay, so this right here would be our expression. 2 times a number plus 5, that number being n. Okay. Same thing on letter B, we need to define a variable, so we can do n again. N equals a number. Now, we need to be careful with this one, okay? 7 less than 3 times the number. We know that less than, we're talking about less than, when we were talking about more than, it was addition. When we're talking about less than, that kind of signifies some subtraction. And a lot of you will have a tendency to write 7 minus 3n, and that would not be what we want to do. We need to put these out of order. We need to first take 3 times the number, and then take less 7. So it's 7 less than 3 times the number. That means you start with 3 times the number, and it's 7 less than that. So that means we have to take 7 away from 3n. So please be sure when it's the words when it's less than. When it says a number less than something else, typically that means you're going to flip the way that the order of them. So be very careful when you see the words less than. Okay, so we want to start with 3 and take 7 away from it. Okay, so that's how you write algebraic expressions. Next thing we're going to look at is equations. Okay, now equations, if you remember from the vocab, it brings in the equal sign. Okay, so we've got this word problem here. Track One Media sells CDs for $12 each. Write an equation, so that tells us we're going to have an equal sign, for cost in terms of the number of CDs purchased. It tells us what they want us to write an equation for. We want to write an equation for cost. We want to write that in terms of the number of CDs purchased. Okay? In this situation, it's easy to just think about it in words. Okay? First, just think about it in words. If you're going into a music store and you're buying some CDs, what would that cost equal? The cost would equal, okay, well, the cost would equal what? How would we figure out that cost? Well, it depends on the number of CDs you purchase. So, cost would equal, but we know each CD is $12. So, cost would equal $12, okay, times the number of CDs purchased. So that's how we would write it in words. That's how we would write our words. Now we need to define our variables. We need to talk about the things that we don't know yet. Okay? The things that we don't know. For example, we don't know the cost. We don't know how many CDs we purchased. Those are the things that we need to create variables for. Okay? So what we'll do is cost. We'll just say C equals cost, okay? And then number of CDs purchased, I'm going to just call that N. You guys could call it any kind of letter you want, okay? This is number of CDs purchased. Okay. So now that we have variables for those words that we don't know, it writes itself. Because if you go back up and look right up here at cost, okay, we're going to replace that with C. So in step 3, that's going to be C. All right. Then we know what equals is. Equal is just an equal sign. 12 times the number of CDs purchased. So if we're multiplying and we're putting a number and a variable together, remember we just put them together. So that would be 12 in. So that would be our equation. C equals 12n. Okay, so that is our equation. C equals 12n. Cost equals 12 times the number of CDs. We can use this equation to find out the cost of any number of CDs. Okay. So we can replace any number for C and N. All right, so that's how to write an equation. It's easy, like I said, to put it in words first, kind of just take out of the word problem what it is that you're needing. Then define your variables, then write the equation. All right, so let's look at this last example here. Okay, so we have cost of a purchase. This is a chart we're looking at. We've got cost of a purchase, and then we have change from a 20. Okay, so what this means is you're going into a store, you're purchasing something. Okay, you pay with a 20, all right, and then you get money back. So this right here is the cost of your purchase. This is the change from a 20. So if we're thinking about this in terms of a store, say you're going into a store, you're giving the clerk a $20 bill, you're getting change back. Okay? Get that charging. Okay, while I'm getting this charged, you can start thinking about what you would put in words for this. You're going into a store and you're purchasing an item, and it's not quite $20, but you're paying with a $20 bill. Okay? Okay. So what would your change from 20 equals? Okay. Change from 20 equals what? It equals $20 minus the cost of the purchase. That's how they would calculate your change. Okay. Okay. So that's change from 20 equals $20 minus cost of purchase. So the two things that we need variables for is your change from 20, change from 20, and then cost of purchase. Those are the two things we need variables for. All right, so we can just use maybe an x and y situation here. We can use x for change from 20, and we'll use y for cost of purchase. Okay. Now, all we got to do is replace those words with the variables that we've chosen. So in place of change from 20, we're going to put x. X equals 20 minus y. And this will be our equation. All right, so that is how you write algebraic expressions and equations. Thank you for listening.